guess. When I first graduated from high school, I began employment with the United States Post Office Department as a letter carrier. And then I got promoted to a clerk. And then I got promoted to a post inspector on Friday the 13th, October the 13th, 1967. I rode a train from Dallas, Texas to Washington, D.C. Back in those days, the assignment of being a post inspector, you had to go through 4 phases. Phase 1 was 30 days training in Washington, D.C., classroom. Phase 2 was 6 months in the field training where you were to be domiciled, and I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And phase 3 is 30 more days training, classroom in Washington, D.C. And phase 4 is 2 years on the job training at your domicile. So I finished phase 1 okay. I go to phase 2, and I'm investigating cases in phase 2, miscellaneous criminal assignments, and I identify 4 kids who kicked down mailboxes. And I knew that when I go back to phase 3, I had to give a speech to graduate from phase 3. Wasn't no problem. I had speech in high school. I had speech in college. So I gave a speech in phase 3 classroom about identifying those 4 kids kicking down mailboxes. I later discovered that the instructor, Johnny Bale, recorded my speech. And he played the recording for future classes on how not to give a public speech. That was embarrassing. In December 1969, I was assigned by my boss, who was Rufus Crawford, in Atlanta, Georgia. And Rufus says, "Carl, I want you to be the keynote speaker at a group of postmasters in Rockingham, North Carolina, and I want you to talk about how to prevent crime in the postal facility." I said, "Wonderful." So I go to Rockingham, North Carolina, and I eat dinner. It's a nice steak dinner. And after I finish, then I'm invited to come up on stage. And I go up on stage, and I turn around and I looked out at 100 or more postmasters in suit and ties. The women folks were all in their Sunday best, and there was a podium. We don't have one here today, but there was a podium, and I grabbed that podium, and my throat got a lump, and then I started sweating, and I started shaking, and I got cotton in my mouth, and I'm just, that podium was about to fall off the stage, and so they had offered water for me, so I reached over to drink some water. I spilled water all over myself, trying to give a speech to a bunch of postmasters. And they stared at me horrified. I stared back at them horrified. So I stared at them. It must have been 5 minutes. I turned and I walked off the stage, and I went out into the parking lot, got into my 1965 Plymouth station wagon, and drove 60 miles back to Fayetteville, North Carolina. That was Saturday night. The next Monday morning, I go to my office, and I'm walking in the door, and the telephone rings. "Hello, it's my boss from Atlanta, Georgia, Rufus Crawford." Rufus says, "Carl, Inspector Martin, is it true that you walked out of giving a speech at the postmasters meeting in Rockingham, North Carolina last Saturday night?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You're fired." And he slammed the phone down. And I fell back into my chair, a big, nice executive chair. And there I am, 27-year-old college graduate, a professional, who got fired just because he couldn't talk to a group of people. And I started boohooing. I'm in this godforsaken country of Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I've got a wife and 2 small kids, and I'm fired. So I started crying, just a boohooing. And finally, a few minutes later, the phone rings again, and I pick up the phone. And it's my boss again, Rufus Crawford. Rufus says, Inspector Martin, if I give you a second chance, make you a deal, will you do what I tell you to do? And I said, yes, sir. What is it? He says, I want you to join Toastmasters. And I want you to send me the name and the phone number of the president of your club, because I'm going to check on you every week. And I said, I surely will. And I did. I joined Cape Fear Toastmasters Club in Fayetteville, North Carolina in December 1969. I got promoted to Montgomery, Alabama. First thing I did was to join the Toastmaster Club at Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. Then I got promoted to Memphis, Tennessee. The first thing I did was join the University of Memphis Toastmaster Club in Memphis, Tennessee. Then I got promoted to Houston, Texas. And the first thing I did was to join the YMCA downtown Houston. And that was not convenient. Then I joined one out in Spring, Texas. And then I started 2 clubs in the Houston Post Office, and one is still active today, the Early Risers. And then, now I'm a member of the Deerwood Toastmaster Club in Kingwood, Texas, and we have some honored guests here from that club. My message is, if you will join Toastmasters and participate in Toastmasters, you never have to worry about the words, "You're fired!"